the headmaster of my school, he used to take our year 7 class for RE, and we would talk about anything but religious education in these classes. It got mental sometimes, like how mad it was at things that we discussed. And there was one thing over recent years that's just kind of like, that's really stuck in my mind, was that he was talking about like Nazism and the rise of Hitler, and he said it was talking of, so he was talking about Tony Blair and New Labour, and he was trying to draw comparisons. Bear with me on this. he was saying about how you get young people that are taken in by a movement, and he was talking about the Hitler Youth, and he said that the best way to kind of like to do this was to trash the symbols that young people would have traditionally turned to, symbols like their national flag or religion or these other things that they would always have turned to for kind of like direction, sense of belonging, sense of purpose. And once you've trashed those, what you then do is you then introduce new symbols, but symbols that are specifically designed to appeal to young people. So in his case, it was in his case it was like, so the Nazi flag was one of the things that they did, and aside from that you had like new songs, newspapers, and you just kind of like immerse these young people in this group, and they would never question it because as long as their identity was entangled with this, like belonging to this group, they would have stuck with it. And of course all of us were saying, oh, I would never have joined a group like that, I would never have joined a group like the Nazis, no, that would never have happened. And my headmaster said, no, if you were young people, if you were teenagers at the time in Germany, he said, you would have been completely taken in from it, with it, because you understand how these things built and designed to appeal to the minds of teenagers. And you tend to notice, right, that it's a really easy, it's without a doubt the easiest group to brainwash, because they haven't got it all sussed out yet, but they like to think that they live in a society that has. And so when they think that they live in that society and they think that they've got it all worked out, what then happens is that there's somebody that comes along that vaguely agrees with what they're saying, but kind of like teaches them something new that nobody else has bothered to teach them, and then that's why you kind of like that they're easily swung, easily persuaded. And all you have to do is just do things that appeal to them, so kind of like bright colours, circles, triangles. These are shapes that naturally capture their interest, in the same way that when the Nazis used these symbols, they used like black and red, two colours that automatically appeal to young people. And so you realise that it's kind of like that there's a marketing ploy, and how easy it is to kind of like gain control of the mind of a teenager. It's a simple win. It's a simple win because they haven't got it worked out yet, but they think that they have. And so that's a really kind of that's a proper weak spot. Now, I've never ever in my entire life, well, I've never seen the merit of why you would want to steer everybody around to your way of thinking. I happen to think that kind of like the fact that we think differently is what has the human race never developed, never progressed, by everybody thinking the same way and having the same views. Is one thing that I would always say. But you kind of like, you realise that there are people out there that even if you wouldn't do that, you would understand that they would. And so what is it that they do these days? Well, I would argue that one of the things that they do is it even though kind of like the ideologies and the policies of Nazism have long gone, that will hopefully never resurface for the rest of humanity, you tend to notice that people have kind of like seen what Hitler did, or what Stalin did, because he did the same thing, and they take it as like a playbook. And you tend to see this. So you look at organisations that have like a flag attached to them. The pride flag would be an absolute would be a would be a massive one, something that everybody wears everywhere to acknowledge that they are part of this group, predominantly young people. And then you would say, right, so how far off a point are we where people would kill somebody else for the flag? How far are we off a point where kind of like the demonisation would start of somebody for their dietary choices, i.e. not being a vegan? You know, how far off all of these things are we? And then if you just look at how those people in the past used to do it, and how they used to appeal to teenagers, and how they appeal to and how these movements tend to appeal to teenagers these days, and you tend to notice we're not actually that far away from it. People have picked this up and they've thought, you know what, this is actually a pretty handy playbook. It's a way to get people indoctrinated into a particular way of thinking, and to get them to do some fairly stupid things. And as long as you always give them that sense of belonging and direction, something that they're lacking, well, they'll do anything you say. They'll do anything you say. And this, I tend to find, is unfortunately, I think it's where we're heading as a society. And it's just as we in that class find it absolutely absurd that we would ever have been taken in by the antics of the Nazi Party in Germany in the 1930s. I think it'll probably be, if we look back in like 30, 40 years time, people find it absolutely mad that people were taken in by a lot of the nonsense that goes on today. I'm absolutely certain that that's what will happen. And all it starts from is to do exactly what they did in the past, which is exactly how you take people in by it, particularly teenagers. And they're the most vulnerable ones. But as I say, I'll tell you this, the most important asset to humanity overall is somebody having a divergent brain. We're going nowhere as a species if everybody thinks the same. You know, that's what it's always taken, somebody thinking differently and going against the grain, going against what they're being drawn towards. And that's kind of like, I don't know, that's why I see a darker side to it, but it's just a thought.